Mhm.
But yeah, Carly and Joe, yeah.
Carly and
And
Joe.
I through a friend of mine, um, I was doing a blog hop one night and I went on to a blog that a friend of mine had on their blog roll, and it was all lesbian kink fiction. All the stories were particularly domestic.
So are
This,
these like kinky romance kind of
yeah,
style writing? Because
yeah, yeah,
listen, as a life coach and some of the women that I've worked with, we women have sadly issues, with finding their sensuality. They don't feel comfortable in their skins.
yeah.
They look very poorly and are very insecure about their bodies because they've been in abusive relationships and things like that. So I work with them and I actually do a project. And this is why I love the Carly and Joe thing, where the women and we work on creating a romantic novel kind of short story, or we write a romantic, sexy letter to either a significant other or, somebody in the future. But the women have fun with this because they get to dig deep and feel sexy and use words and kind of get into that mood, and they love it. And even in the women that were in relationships that were not in an abusive relationship, they were abusive to themselves, and so this gave them a way to respark and rekindle something in them, to get them finding that sensuality and that sexy in them. And so we'd write letters or poetry or short stories, and they would give it to their significant other or their husband, their boyfriend. And the guys loved it. And the women were ecstatic.
Yeah,
And, it broke that level, that first level of
yeah,
insecurity. And, and they would tell me, I had the best, what last night.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it gives them, that
yeah,
first step, and they enjoy it. They have so much fun. It's uncomfortable and awkward, but from being a woman to woman, they're a little bit more open to it. And then,
yeah.
when they're ready, they give it over and we see what happens. And I haven't had any bad experiences from this project. Um, and
I
I
can
hope that
imagine.
it continues because women need to find that sensuality. So in saying that, Carly and Joe,
I
and this
love.
is like
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
what I really loved on when I was reading the stories on this site, I loved the fact that they were. I mean, they were about a certain kind of they were about activities that, yeah, on the one hand were erotic activities, they were intimate one-on-one activity, but they were also, it was about a lot of the story. It was about friendship. It was about intimacy. It was about all those things. And because I write stuff that's often very emotional and quite sensual, I'd been asked
Mm.
in the past um, if I'd have a go at trying to do some erotica, and it never really worked.
Nice.
And
Oh no.
it never worked because generally it was some people who generally when I when I came up with something, they then say, actually, could it be more like this? And what they were looking for was something like a little bit closer to like full on porn. And it was
Right,
like,
porn,
that's
right. And it,
not,
yeah,
and it was like,
right,
yeah, that's not what I kind of do. But the
right. Did you,
thing, I loved it because it was writing, I could write kind of
it was
stuff,
more your style.
but I could
Yeah,
write that kind of stuff from like an emotional place.
nice.
And I think it helped because it was as well, that's more, I don't think it's necessarily always so, but it's traditionally tends to be more of a female way of looking at things and a traditionally male way of looking at things. And um,
To
I
think
tend
outside the
quite
box.
often to go. I like writing in a kind of female voice. A lot of my stories I'll have female
That
lead
feminine
characters.
energy.
So I kind
Yeah.
of like doing that. So I thought I emailed the person who wrote the site and I said, actually, could I write something for it? And she said, well, if you want to have a go, I don't know if it would. So I wrote something and it went down really well. And it was actually that time it was a poem. And then I kind of, from that, I developed the Joe and Carly's voice. Sorry, they're generally written in Joe's voice. And when I write Joe, um, I used a lot of my own experiences, the kind of trauma that she was coming from.
Okay.
That was based a lot on my own story, the kind of grief that she was experiencing. So when
Mm.
she came to meet Carly, she was in very much a place that I'd been in. And
Mm.
in a funny way, even though when I started writing the Joe and Carly stuff, I had actually come through a lot of that, I kind of revisited a lot of it in those stories. And some of that I actually worked through on a whole new level in writing the Joe and Carly pieces.
Love
And
it.
because, and I then thought, well, why not? As she's basically a part of me, make Joe a poet. So then, increasingly in the stories, Joe would write poetry about her relationship with Carly. And that was because I kind of wanted to explore that. So some of them are stories, some of them are poems, some of the stories with Joe's poetry in there. And
Love it. It's
I
brilliant.
actually find now that they're one of my favorite safe places to go to. And because they're in a like a domestic discipline relationship, Joe's safe place actually is over Carly's lap. And yet, oddly enough,
Oh,
Joe and Carly are actually my safe place sometimes. Sometimes I think, you know what, I want to go and write a bit of Joe. So I will. And I often I'll work through something by like writing how Joe feels it and seeing how Carly responds. And actually, I do. I love writing those stories. And I found that actually they were actually some of the work that I was most proud of. So I've been putting together a collection of the ones that I'm really, really pleased with. That in a way, tell in a sort of poetic way the kind of
mm.
trajectory of their story together. And I've been working on that lately and kind of reworking some of them, developing them, just because I actually really love the Joe Carly stuff because it's
So, do we have a book coming out with Carly and Joe?
actually, well, that's one of the things I've been thinking when putting the collection together, that it will be really cool to actually do that
You
as a,
would.
because I mean, in the past year since I moved to this village, there've been a couple of poetic collections come out, but it would be really cool to do a Joe Carly one.
It would.
And
John, I'll be 49 next week. Um, we're still growing. So it's hard to say 100% of who we are. We have innate authentic qualities. We have that center. That's our spirit that won't change. But as an individual, as you know, we grow and we learn through experiences, through life-changing experiences like you moving. And when you create, these stories with Carly and Joe, it's it's like you're living, um, you know, in that other world with them because Joe is significant to you. Joe has that kindredness to you, that character of you. And So that being said, who's Carly to you?
Um, Carly probably, in a way, expresses all sorts of things I felt engaging with other people. That thing
Mm,
that's because you can get that's the excitement of that's the excitement of the world that we live in when we engage with other people when that goes well, and sometimes even when it kind of goes badly, it's the excitement of seeing where the road takes you and the excitement of I mean, sometimes it can be terrifying and we can be really deeply hurt, and it's how we come round that, and then it's. I think with Carly, she exemplifies a lot of um, I suppose because she's probably in a way a little bit more idealized than Joe. She's kind of exemplifies a lot of the best of those qualities that kind of like make you think, actually, I'm feeling better about who I am right now. Those ones that can
mm,
surprise yourself. Um, and sometimes the best times when we surprise ourselves is when we surprise ourselves with ourselves. And sometimes
correct.
other people can help us do that. There were days when I've woken up and I've thought, everything kind of sucks today. And there were days when I've thought, I suck at everything I've done and every decision I've made. And it just,
Yes,
well,
that's very common. Yeah, we all do that.
I'm
Yeah.
pretty feeling that when someone turns up round to me and says, what you did the other day or what you wrote, do you know what that meant to me? And they will say something,
Oh.
I'll just go, wow, I had no idea.